Welcome back. Some big news in Washington, and we call it big even though you won't see it in the New York Times or on the other networks. The FCC under Brendan Carr is moving forward with plans to radically reshape the TV and media landscape. Carr wants to remove the 39% cap on big TV networks, and if he gets his way, networks like ABC, CBS, and NBC and liberal station groups like Nextar are going to be able to own stations that'll reach most of America, meaning your local TV station could be owned by someone in New York City dictating what news you get to see no matter where you are. Right now, federal law prevents networks from owning stations reaching more than 39% of U.S. households. President Reagan started the cap in the 1980s. He set it initially at 25%. Reagan knew that if large station groups owned all the local stations, they'd be dictating your local news and, frankly, trying to help Democrats win elections. And for decades, the TV industry has tried to get rid of the caps for many reasons. We know they like political power. They also like making a lot of money. And you reduce competition and you increase prices, which makes perfect sense for them. But frankly, it doesn't for us. And connected to the cap issue is the possible Nextar merger. Nextar wants to buy Tegna and create the largest station group in the country, reaching 80% of U.S. households. Think about that. It's a bold move. Remember, Nextar is a very liberal station group. They also own News Nation, another liberal cable network. Like, we need another one of those. News Nation's biggest host, Chris Cuomo, he's joined by other anti-Trumpers, including Ashley Banfield and Elizabeth Vargas. Take a look.
Hey, I'm Chris Cuomo. It's Thursday, and we are live with breaking news for News Nation's continuing coverage of the first indictment of a U.S. president in our history. Former President Donald Trump has made history once again. He made history by being twice impeached. Now he is the first indicted by a Manhattan grand jury. And it is safe to assume it likely involves payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign to silence claims of an extramarital sexual encounter with porn star Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, nice. So now Nextar and News Nation want even more power. And joining us now for more on all of this is Chris Ruddy, the CEO of Newsmax. Chris, great to have you on tonight. Take us through what's going on here.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I don't think I've ever been on set with you. We've been on quite a number of times together. And I was liking that Cuomo, you know, he seemed to relish every mention of Trump being indicted. And, you know, and I think that Newsmax and people like you, Rob, are about telling the facts. So I'm really glad that I could join with you tonight.
I appreciate that.
Big news. There was a filing today at the FCC by a very renowned legal expert, Brian Fitzpatrick of Vanderbilt Law School. He is a former Justice Scalia law clerk, very respected on the Constitution and legal analysis, and says the FCC's plan here, which they're moving towards doing, of eliminating this TV cap is illegal. It's a violation of federal law. The federal law had been set, and that they cannot change it. Only Congress can change it. So I think it's a very big development in this story, which is emerging.
A Scalia law clerk. Here's the exact quote. Indeed, it is hard to see how the commission could raise Congress's 39% cap without running afoul of Congress's 2004 provision requiring any entity to divest when they exceed 39%. The commission cannot waive these statutory commands. Agencies are subordinate to Congress, not the other way around. If the commission doesn't like what Congress did in 2004, it should ask Congress to change it, not try and evade it. Has President Trump weighed in on this?
Well, I have not heard the president ever say anything about lifting the 39% cap. In fact, I've never heard him say that he wants TV networks to have more power and more control.
Right.
He's made it very clear that he would like the media to be held accountable. By giving ABC, CBS, and NBC a free visa to basically buy stations in every market in the country, I don't think is a very Trumpian idea. And I think that had the FCC done this, Rob, 10 years ago, Donald Trump would have never been elected president. In fact, the Congress would not be, if people in New York were deciding what the local news in Pittsburgh was, or in Detroit, or a lot of local markets in Cleveland, they don't own those stations. Those are owned by independent station groups, and it gives a diversity and a lack of control. And it's a very dangerous thing what the FCC is promulgating, and I think could be a disaster for conservatives around the country.
That is such a good point. I've worked in 4 local markets across this country, and I've seen it happen firsthand. You can talk about this story, but you can't talk about that story because it doesn't fit the narrative, the corporate narrative.
Well, I've been in journalism for almost 40 years, dating myself here a little bit, and I would say that 80 to 90% of the newsrooms in America are liberal, right? Probably your experience, most of the
Liberal
journalists.
across the board, across the board.
So now the FCC is saying, well, let's have them, you're dealing with that, which is not a great situation, but imagine now if all those newsrooms are controlled by 3 or 4 networks, not just big markets like New York. And you know, the big networks control, where do they control the stations? New York, Boston, Los Angeles, Houston. All those markets are totally blue.
Right.
They're totally radically left. They're totally woke because the news channels in those markets are not holding them accountable. Do you really want that to happen throughout the rest of the nation? Very dangerous move.
And think about the power that local news has over local elections. I worked in Red State, Florida at a local station there. It was by far the most liberal network that I worked at because of who owned it. Does this seem out of character for Brandon Carr? He's somebody who, even today, was tweeting about some of the late-night hosts. He's been very critical of many of the left-wing journalists, quote-unquote, on TV. Does this seem out of character for him?
I don't know what his motive is. You know, this whole move of the 39% getting rid of the cap is a big TV industry thing. It's an inside the Beltway thing. Donald Trump has never called for this once. I've never heard it once. As you know, I've known him for many decades. He's never even mentioned anything of the sort. So this is very strange that the FCC is making this their priority item as their policy agenda. It's great. He wants to criticize people that are not fair and balanced, whether they're comedians or not. But then to give their station owners, the people that own the networks for Jimmy Kimmel, the right to buy more stations and put Jimmy Kimmel on even more stations. What sense does that make? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, why do you think that's happening? Do you think he's getting pressured from somebody we might not be aware of?
Look, I don't know. You know, you could speculate day and night on why things are done.
Yes.
It's just a bad thing that it's being done. We need to push back on it. We need to say that people in America don't support this. Nextar, for instance, is a very liberal company. He's supporting, it appears to be that he will support the merger of Nextar with Tegna. This is a company that is a very liberal company. We just looked up, what did Nextar employees donate to the presidential candidates in the last election?
Okay.
78% of Nextar employee donations went to Kamala Harris. 78%. Very liberal company. And meanwhile, we're trying to break federal law. You know, this wasn't just a standard merger. This is a violation of federal law to get them to increase to 80% reach across the nation.
All right. So what can people do? And that's just shocking when you think about it. 8 out of every 10 people in a newsroom donated to Kamala Harris, and now they want more. What can people do if they want the FCC to lift this cap?
Well, I think people need to realize that that local news is everything in local elections, and that we're going to give a handful of companies control. Americans say, 80% of Americans say that they get all of their local news from TV news.
Right.
Newspapers are dead or dying, and big tech, it doesn't really provide much local news. So I think people should call their congressmen, call their senators, let Speaker Johnson know, Senate Leader Thune know, that they oppose lifting the 39% cap, that Congress alone should handle it, and not allow these big networks to get more power.
Yeah, Chris, I notice we're the only ones talking about this tonight. You've always given us the ability and empowered us to talk about issues like this. We appreciate you being with us, Chris Ruddy. Thank you.
Rob, thank you.